Back on the road, we are sensing that we are approaching an important commercial center. Let's enjoy some local color.
Adjective, yeah, this is after one to the right. I said so.
Indeed, we are in a city that was prosperous and capital of Egypt for millennia. We are in Luxor and Karnak. This is the model of the Karnak complex, to which over 1,000 years 180 kings made additions and extensions in all directions. We enter by the avenue of ram-headed sphinxes made by Ramses II. The ram is the representation of the god Amun-Ra, the sun god, whom this temple is dedicated. Each ram protects the figure of the pharaoh. We stop at the first of the 9 pylons. No wonder that the first we encounter is the latest and unfinished. That is, the surface is not smooth yet. In the back we see how it was built. There was a ramp of bricks, helping workers to carry stuff on the top. This is how they were also raising beams on top of the columns. And this is a spectacular unfinished column. It is a pile of square stones, which the artist then converts into smooth round cylinders. On the same side of the courtyard is the temple of Ramses III, who is represented outside, live, and inside as columns in the Osiris, that is mummy position, symbolizing the belief in resurrection. On the wall, Ramses III offers the god the plan of this temple, and the god gives him in exchange the Ankt, the key of life. The tall statue of Pinutjem, high priest and pharaoh of the 21st dynasty. We are still in the first courtyard, heading towards the large hypostyle hall containing 138 columns, built under 4 kings, Horemheb, Seti I, Ramses II, and finished by Ramses IV. The bud-shaped columns impress through their height 23 meters and thickness. We are walking out of the hypostyle towards the core of the Temple of Ammon. In a small courtyard, we find the obelisk of Thutmose I, one of the four. Two of them are in Vatican. Steps away in the vestibule of the former shrine stands the tallest of obelisks, that of Queen Hatshepsut. She was wearing false beard and was one of the most successful pharaohs. A second obelisk lies broken. The next clip shows how the obelisk was completely walled up during Hatshepsut's successor, Thutmose III. Their history is interesting. The latter married Hatshepsut's daughter when he was 5, and the queen forced her regency for 22 years. She was to Thutmose's mother-in-law, stepmother, auntie, and trustee. After Thutmose became pharaoh, he tried to erase all traces of Hatshepsut's achievements. In front of the shrine of Ammon-Ra, Thutmose III represented the Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. Thutmose III captured many cities represented here. This one is Jerusalem. Alexander Macedon took on Egyptian clothes, claimed divine origin, and his son and successor rebuilt the original temple in granite, which still preserves its original colors. In the back, the original festival hall of Thutmose III was built with unusual columns, having upside-down capitals. The original colors, 3,500 years old, are achieved with vegetal pigments covered with egg white. The botanical garden of Thutmose III, showing animals and plants brought by him from his expeditions. The beetle, a symbol of life, because it was supposed to push the sun disk on the sky. If you go round it 7 times, it's supposed to bring luck. Turn around 7 times. We are driving along the Sphinx Alley that joined Karnak to Luxor, following the path of old processions, except that now the alley is in the main street of a village. During a full month of feast, while the Nile was flooding, the statue of Ammon was being carried from Karnak to Luxor along this path. This is the parade represented on the walls, in which we recognize the sons of Ramses from their hairstyle, followed by fattened animals. We are met by the pylons, obelisk and colossal granite statues of Ramses II. The fresco shows the complete pylon at that time. There were 2 obelisks and 2 seated and 4 standing statues of Ramses. The missing obelisk is the one in Place de la Concorde. Behind the pylons it is rather crowded. This court of Ramses II has rows of papyrus bud columns and 2 statues of Ramses and Nefertari. In the 12th century, the court was filled with sand to the top. That is why this mosque was built on top of the columns. This used to be its entrance gate. This colonnade leads to another court, started by Amenophis III and finished by the teenager king Tutankhamun, who is represented here with his wife Ankh-Sen-Pamun. We are getting closer to the temple proper. It has many chambers, one of which was converted by the Romans into a chapel, painted with frescoes. Others were used as stables. These holes are for attaching the horses. There still are original wall carvings from the time of Amenophis III and Alexander Macedon. This room depicts offerings brought to Amon-Ra, such as animals or the perfume extracted from the flower of the lotus. And in the next picture we see how the physical body and soul of a man are made in parallel on the same potter's wheel. Alexander the Great remade the inner shrine. And finally, this is a tribute to a single-armed man who could not go to war. By the time the warriors came back, each one found a baby in his home. He became the fertility god Min. We finish our visit of Luxor by night, under the calls for prayer from the mosques. In the morning of May the 13th, I left our Luxor hotel and crossed the Nile to its west bank, in view of the much anticipated visit to the Valley of the Kings, the burial place of the New Kingdom pharaohs. I made part of the approach on donkeyback. Then by electric car, to arrive in the barren, reddish valley at the bottom of a natural pyramid. It is thanks to this pyramid that the necropolis was chosen to be here. Each dot in this map represents one of the 63 tombs carved in rock. My ticket allowed me to visit inside 3 tombs. Let's start with one of the best hidden and older tombs, that of Thutmose III. One first climbs then one descends. To end up in a first chamber supported by pillars. Then comes the famous oval burial chamber with the red sarcophagus inside. The wall is a scroll of the secret book of Amduat, divided in the 12 hours of night, which tells the story of Ra, the sun god, traveling in the underworld after it sets. For instance, it had to change into a serpent in order to pass through that channel. The pharaoh is taking the same journey ultimately to become one with Ra and immortal. This mummy, like most of others, was found rewrapped in a common tomb by 21st dynasty priests who opened all tombs probably in order to sell the treasures in a period of famine. We are walking into the tomb of Ramses VI, simple but beautifully decorated with paintings on plaster like the others. They represent the origin of cosmos and instructions on how to survive in the afterlife. The burial chamber has a heavy black sarcophagus assembled from broken pieces. Ramses II had a tomb to accommodate his 100 children, but it was closed. In this view, we see that the Tutankhamun tomb is the one on the right, just under the Ramses VI entrance. The tomb is apparently not richly decorated because it was made in a rush. He died as a teenager, but it is famous through the treasure found intact by Carter in 1922, which is now visible in the Cairo Museum. Because there was no time to carve the Book of the Dead on the walls, it was carved in gold on 4 shrines that faded one into another. Inside there were 3 sarcophagus, and finally the famous golden mask. Tutankhamun lived in the troubled era when Akhenaten, his father, tried to bring a monotheistic religion, which is what his contemporary Moses eventually did elsewhere. Further south stands the impressive facade of the mortuary temple of Hatshepsut, in Arabic Deir el-Bahri. In other language it is hard to say. Destroyed 3 times by her nephew, by Akhenaton, and by the Christians, it consists of 3 terraces, some built and some carved in the mountain, by Hatshepsut's architect, priest and lover, Senmut. This scene depicts how an obelisk was pulled. And this is goddess Hathor as a cow. A ramp led us to the 2nd terrace. At this level we see the history of her life, as well as plants and animals brought by her from the expedition in Punt or Somalia. In fact, in front of the temple there still is the root of such a plant. At the same level, a temple to Hathor and the festival in honor of the goddess. And this ramp will take us to the 3rd terrace, where we admire the beautiful collection of pilasters. A real, authentic scene for the opera Aida. Closer to the Nile, where each king had a mortuary temple, we find the Colossi of Memnon, actually the statues of Amenophis III, part of his mortuary temple. These are the last images from the Valley of the Kings, on the west bank of the Nile facing Luxor. Thank you. Oh, no.
على باسا this green على باسا white على باسا this words look this carrot look the bird the baza nobody has this word
Yes, I
it's
know.
my handmade carrot because it's Egyptian
It's beautiful, but I don't.
it's Egyptian no dollar
And I return to my base, 1st class.
first class?
Sorry?
First class there?
Yeah. First. Yeah.
Full circle.
In the meanwhile, Horia was visiting the two Egyptian sacred cities of Abydos and Dendera. Abydos is the seat of the sanctuary to Osiris, and no wonder one discovers his representation on the walls. One can admire the columns raised by Seti I, beautiful frescoes, including one in which the pharaoh offers Isis a feathered Z pillar, which symbolizes the backbone of Osiris and hence stability. In Dendera, there is an almost intact temple dedicated to goddess Hathor, renovated by Greco-Romans, where all the columns have Hathor capitals. Among the highlights, the frescoes on the birth of cosmic order from chaos and the zodiac. The region is busy with agriculture, and thanks to the Aswan Dam, one harvests in Egypt 3 crops a year. Well, I hope you enjoyed this part of the trip. The rest is waiting for you.